Well, hello and welcome to the stream. Let's go ahead and what we can get into. We're going to be picking up on a little bit of Art Bell. Enjoy the stream.
And he's going to be up shortly. I have a urgent message from Stan Vale in Australia, courtesy of goodness for the internet. And it just arrived here. We'll get to that in a moment. A little more business. The following just arrived from Australia. I'm going to read it to you. I don't want to scare you. Simply accept it for what it is from Stan Dale, down under. Art, I'm hesitant to announce the following, but I feel I must in light of the unofficial reports of magnetic field anomalies in California 2 days ago. The official report, which I sent you, says no anomalies occurred yet. I continue to get silence reports, etc., saying it did occur. That's very interesting. For days, I've been watching 3 tremendous thermal changes grow in size off the coasts of Nicaragua, the Mexican border, and Baja California, up to San Francisco. I've not yet posted these on my webpage because I wasn't sure what to say yet. Florida, the Bahamas, Chile, Argentina, Northern Australia, Southern Coast Australia, Adelaide, North Island, New Zealand, Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, Japan, and Kamchatka Peninsula should all be on alert for action as well. Still trying to assess the changes here. Storms may be confusing the vessels' thermal effects along the east U.S. coast. For those who have access to my webpage, use my homepage to go to the Otis Thermal Change page of the U.S. Navy. Download the recent thermal anomaly imagery and look at the red and dark blue areas. These are where the next actions may be. I'm not sure of this call, but I think we have a problem here. Regards, Stan Dale. So thank you, Stan, and there it is for what it's worth. And that follows on the heels of the show we did about the magnetic anomaly here. It's really odd stuff. In a moment, Dr. Begich from Alaska. We'll go all the way up to Alaska to Dr. Begich. We're going to be talking about a lot of it relates to what we've been talking about. Possibly what Stan Deo just talked about. The unusual weather anomalies that have been occurring. And, of course, the Project Heart itself. So, coming up in a moment. All right, we're almost there. I need to get the rest of this out to you, though. The president in Belfast was asked by a 13-year-old boy named Ryan about the Roswell crash. Our president said that as far as I know, an alien spacecraft did not crash in Roswell in 1947. And if it did, the president wants us to know about it. So there you are. A reference to Roswell while the president is in Belfast. And the following came to me earlier today from Richard Hopewood. Dear Art, I need to say, I told you so. Quotes here. I told you so. Now, why do you suppose, says Richard, that Clinton would bring up Roswell right after Katie and in Belfast? Thoughts? Question mark. Signed, well, yes, I don't know. You did tell us. That's what I would say. As background for Dr. Begich coming up here in a moment, we had a show in which we had these incredible reports going in about magnetic anomalies some coming from people in very technical positions. We've had confirmation there's been a change in the airport at Portland because of a magnetic change. And just a tidbit to add to it all. Art, here is another tidbit, he calls it, in reference to the magnetic change. On local news here in San Diego, Channel 8, they ran a small clip on turtles that cannot seem to find their way to breeding ground, and they're dying at sea. Scientists say it has something to do with water temperature. The water is warmer than normal off the New Jersey coast. This water change alone could have a meaning, but also the navigation system of turtles could be off because of magnetic deviation. Could be, check it out. So we continue to get these strange reports of magnetic deviation. Could it have anything to do with HAARP? Dr. Nick Begich, who is the eldest son of the late United States Congressman from Alaska, Nick Begich Sr., and political activist Peggy Begich, is known in Alaska for his own activities. He is a past president of the Alaska Federation of Teachers and the Anchorage Council of Education. He's been pursuing independent research in the sciences, politics, for most of his adult life. He received his doctorate in traditional medicine from the Open International University for Complementary Medicines in November of 1994. He wrote the first major story on the HAARP project, published in October of 1994 in Nexus. So you ought to know that magazine if you're into this sort of thing. An international magazine based in Australia. One mentioned, you'll recall, by Stan Dale. His research files on the project and related technologies include more than 400 documents spanning 80 years of technological developments. He co-authored the book with Gene Manning, entitled Angels Don't Play This Harp, Advances in Tesla Technology. So let's go to Alaska and talk to Dr. Begich. Dr. Begich.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for being patient through all that. I take it that you may know of Sandeo in one way or another.
Yeah, I think I read a number of his articles, so I am a bit familiar with his work.
Where are you in Alaska, by the way?
I'm in Anchorage.
Anchorage, nice. We had you on one time, or in the sense that Linda did an interview with you, Linda Howe, right, on a Dreamland program about HAARP. So I guess we need to begin at the beginning because there's a big audience here who doesn't get Dreamland. They don't know what HAARP is. I barely know what HAARP is. What is HAARP?
I'm going to kind of characterize it in two different ways. First, let's talk about what the military says it is, and let's talk about then what our research indicates that it is, and where we feel pretty confident the project is really headed. Project HAARP, the HAARP is an acronym for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, which is a mouthful in and of itself. But it really it's kind of a misnomer at the same time. I mean, it's really not so much about the aurora as it is the very upper portion of the layering of the atmosphere, if you will, in simple terms, the ionosphere, which is between 50 miles and 620 miles above the Earth's surface. And this is the area in which the lower portion, which at least is where the aurora takes place, and the upper portions are an ionized area where a number of varying effects occur, and it's essentially the shield around the Earth that protects us from incoming cosmic radiation, X-rays.
And my audience ought to know I'm a ham radio operator, and it is that which allows people at this time of night to hear KENR radio hundreds of miles there in Anchorage, away from Anchorage, as the ionosphere, I believe, thickens, check me if I'm wrong, during the nighttime hours. These signals at certain frequencies at shortwave are then able to, in effect, bounce off the ionosphere and come back to Earth. That's how AM radio stations are able to be heard at a very long distance. That's not basically correct?
Yeah, basically that's correct. And what essentially the military has been doing here in Alaska is experimenting with ways of creating sort of artificial effects in the ionosphere. The things that they pretty openly talk about, in fact, they very openly talk about. First of all, if people remember, a number of years ago in Wisconsin, they were putting in really long antennas on the ground, running miles and miles, which were to generate an extremely low frequency for communicating with submarines. What they're doing now with the ionosphere research is by modulating the ionosphere, they can actually create that extremely low frequency, making the ionosphere essentially converting it from DC to AC. So what it in fact does,
Wait a minute, slow up, you're even starting to lose me. I understand process of modulation, that is to attach, as I have always understood it, intelligence to a carrier.
right? Well, what we're using is a radio frequency transmitter in Alaska. It's a very high frequency transmitter, radio frequency transmitter, but it generates a very large amount of energy. What in effect, what they in fact call, the military calls them ionospheric heaters because they generate so much power. But what they do is on the Earth, they convert electricity to radio frequency and there's an antenna array.
I've seen photographs of this, by the way. And what kind of space? All these dipoles that are set up on the ground, I've seen the photographs, are incredible. How many of them are there? How much space does this encompass?
It's probably on the order of 20 acres right now, but the actual study itself is positioned on with a 5,000 acre place. And it's designed to be modular and added to, periodically. In fact, the first two phases of the project were originally contracted to a company, Arco Power Technologies. And the first phase is complete and is operating in a test mode. And what these antenna arrays do essentially is they take the electricity, convert it to radio frequency, and then they send that up to the ionosphere. And the way you can visualize this, and this is a very unique feature in this particular ionosphere heater, when all of the other heaters operate in the world, and there are several, there's some in the Soviet Union, there's one in Norway, they're sort of scattered around. But when you look at them, the old technology, if you visualize a cone, with the narrow portion of the cone on the Earth and the wide portion at the ionosphere, with the energy getting less and less dense as it goes higher and higher. That's the old technology.
Like a shotgun blast.
Right, exactly. Just keep spreading out, and the impact is less and less the further away from the source you get. Understood. What this new technology has developed is a way to focus the energy so that it starts out with the wide angle at the base, which is the reason for this large antenna array, and it focuses the energy into a narrow beam. So what's delivered at the ionosphere is really many times more powerful than what previously could be done with old technology.
About what frequency are they doing this? Do you know?
I have it in the specs, but it's a broad range that they've been actually licensed, but the design gives them essentially the complete radio frequency ranges all the way up into microwave ranges, but they are only authorized in certain bands, and I don't have those right in front of me where I can give those to you. But essentially what's going to occur and what they're doing now is they're focusing that energy up, they're creating a blast of energy in the ionosphere to create, first of all, by pulsing it or modulating it. In a certain way, they create the ELF for the purpose of communicating with submarines. And since the very beginning, they've acknowledged that's one of the applications that the DoD, Department of Defense, sees in this particular technology. The other application that we currently have in the federal budget for 1996 is what's called Earth penetrating tomography. And to put that in simple terms, this is where they're going to bounce the signal. They're going to create a plasma mirror, is what they call it, by setting the energy up in the ionosphere. They're going to create sort of an artificial lens. And then from another transmitter located in Alaska near Fairbanks called HIPATH, they're going to bounce the signal off of that man-made plasma lens. And it's going to come back down to the Earth at a coherent, extremely low frequency. It's going to be running in the 1 to 30 hertz range. And with instruments placed on the ground, or traversing the ground in slow-moving aircraft, they're able to literally look down into the air several kilometers. And what the intention is, and what this is funded under the United States budget, is under non-proliferation, counter-proliferation.
All right, I want you to hold it right there. I've got a million questions. We're at the bottom of the hour. Relax. We'll be right back to you and get into this more deeply. Dr. Nick Begich is my guest, author of Angels Don't Play His Heart. We'll be right back. Representation of Christian Crusader, then December 1st, 1995.
Okay, I'm going to try and keep it non-technical for those technophiles out there. They'll see a second, but I want to everyone really understands what we're talking about.
Here's what will help us understand, Doctor. Let's explain about the spectrum. Where does the spectrum begin? In other words, beginning with audio, you know, that the sound of our voice, and going on.
Okay, let me get a quick reference.
Okay, well, I can help. Our voice is one part of the spectrum. There are frequencies lower than even that. But if you think about it this way, our voice is one spectrum. Where sound ends, radio begins. In other words, at 1 hertz, radio begins, and it goes all the way up and then into the short wave, broadcast band, the AM broadcast band, then short wave, what's called short wave, then it goes up into the microwave region, and then eventually it goes into light. And that is the spectrum. Now, the area that you're talking about, heart, you're saying is dealing with frequencies between 1 and 30 hertz. That's very low.
As far as for this particular earth-penetrating tomography application, that is correct.
Well, that's very low. That's also very interesting because I've heard, Doctor, that these are frequencies that affect our biological beings.
That's correct, and that's what we're going to get into next, because I think that's really an important area that people really don't really recognize what can happen here. And in our research and when we put the book together, we focused a great deal on the biological effects, the physiological effects of ELF, extremely low frequency. And what our research showed and what we found was a number of very compelling documents. We found some documents from the Air Force, the International Red Cross. The ones from the Air Force deal with the development of radio frequency weapons that can be pulsed at a low frequency like what we're talking about here for use and debilitating mental functions of troops over a battlefield area. And the document that we found specifically was low intensity conflict in modern technology and was put together by Maxwell Air Force Base in 1986. And the particular sections that we were concerned about indicate very strongly that these were where the government was in the 80s, in the middle 80s and early 80s, developing these kind of weapon systems. And when you think about the discussions in the press in recent years about microwave weapons and non-lethal weapons, they kind of skirt the microwave and they skirt the radio frequencies, or they're mentioned occasionally. In fact, we referenced some of them in the New York Times articles that talk about those weapons on a very quick and cursory basis.
Let me try and understand. What can you describe what the physiological effects or what we know about the physiological effects of very low frequency, high intensity how does it affect the human being?
Okay, well let's talk about mental function primarily. And we can start with research that goes back to the 60s. There was a gentleman by the name of J.F. Gordon MacDonald, who was a science advisor to Lyndon Johnson, and he was a geophysicist at UCLA. And what he asserted in 1969 was that by modulating the ionosphere at a very low frequency, you could in fact debilitate human beings' mental function, or create disturbances in mental function, causing mood swings over very large rates. Now, this is as early as 1969. Then in 1970, Zbigniew Brzezinski, National Security Advisor, Jimmy Carter, wrote a book, and that book we referenced as well, and it was called Between Two Ages. And in that book, he lays out again this technology that was coming, but at the time there was not a way to get enough energy up to the ionosphere to create that effect. What HAARP is, and what it's capable of, is getting that kind of energy density to the ionosphere and modulating it to create those kinds of effects over very broad areas.
And my next question may be one you cannot answer. Are they able, to direct like you say, over a very broad area? They bounce this wide and narrow beam at the ionosphere, off the ionosphere, and it comes back to Earth. Are they able to direct where it comes back?
Yes, within certain perimeters. The way they do that is the ionospheric or the plasma mirror that they create with that blast. The way the patents read, we found the 12 patents associated with this specific project, and those we describe very carefully in the book when we break out exactly what they mean. But with that mirror that they create, they have the ability to move it and focus it and direct it so that pulse energy coming off of it actually goes directionally the way they want it to go.
Oh, boy. So in other words, if we were in a battle, take a situation, for example, in Iraq, right? They might be able to actually focus low-frequency energy down on a battlefield full of hundreds of thousands of the enemy and create mental confusion, perhaps mood swings, as you pointed out. In other words, completely mentally demoralize the enemy.
And doesn't that sound like what happened there? I mean, the speculation that we've heard, and it is speculation, that in fact they were testing these kinds of weapon systems in the Gulf War, and there's, in all likelihood, when you think back on the footage that was coming out of there, and I mean, they didn't shoot back much. I mean, we had situations there where people basically were confused and over large areas.
Now, only one little thing, though, Doctor. There's a big controversy right now about rock archers that are coming back.
That's right.
With debilitating mental dysfunctional diseases and physiological diseases, and nobody quite can figure out what the hell it is.
Right. And we explore the physiological effects. And when you take low frequencies or specific frequencies that will resonate with chemicals that are already in the body, that may be in the body in amounts that are considered non-toxic or non-lethal. But if you hit the resonating frequency of those chemicals, you can in fact create a toxic environment that becomes unexplainable because the actual levels of the chemicals up there, you sort of souped them up, you amped them up in a way, and then you created a physiological response or a chemical reaction. And when you take the radiation away, things got back to normal, but yet you still have this chemical reaction that's already taken place. So, that speculation is there. And what we do in the book is we document, scientists that have developed that technology. We show where the Navy has developed technologies along these lines. We show a specific researcher, Jose Delgado, working at Yale University for a number of years, in fact, almost a couple of decades, developed a way using radio frequency, first with implants and later wirelessly, creating mood swings in animals and humans where they would go from basically almost a sleep state to high anxiety and agitation and back and forth like switching on a light switch.
This is going to surprise you, but over the past several days, Doctor, I've been getting faxes. We have this whole magnetic anomaly. Do you listen up there? Do you have to listen to a lot?
Right, and I have picked up some of that same data, and the issues come to me and people have asked, could this be harm? And the answer is yeah, it could be, but that's against the claim.
But I want to add that on top of the night, we had all this magnetic anomaly going on. I started getting faxes from people. You may have even heard me read one from people who said, it's a funny thing. We were in this wonderful mood. And the other day, and on the very day of my magnetic business occurred, and all of a sudden, a light-hearted, happy mood turned into a depressed, for no reason, and it was the whole mood, a depressed, unusual, strange mood, just like that.
Yeah, and that can happen. But what it requires in order to happen is it requires an ELF in a low range, in the 1 to 30 hertz range, is what the research shows. And we point to that research in the text. The text has 357 footnoted sources. So as people roll through, they can actually go to those source documents and see for themselves. But when you're operating in that low frequency range, if it's delivered in the right waveform, with the right frequency, you can create these effects. Now let's talk about what the military said when we interviewed them about the earth penetrating thermography application.
I know they're looking for underground tunnels and bunkers.
Right. And it will, and they can do that, but they also are operating in that 1 to 30 hertz range is what they acknowledge. And they said, it's no problem because we're operating when the energy comes back to Earth, essentially the same as what otherwise might naturally occur in the Earth. The only difference is that it's coherent or it's rhythmic. But that's exactly to create these debilitating effects. In fact, Jose Delgado at Yale showed that you only needed energy levels at 1/50th, 1/50 of the Earth's naturally occurring energy strength, if you will. The only difference is it had to be coherent, or isn't it? Modulated. Oh, that's right. So here's what we have. We have parts that's able to be directed over a very large area, create conditions 50 times more powerful than what's necessary. And yet, we're not talking about this. There's no biological scientists on the front end of this project that are attached to this project. I mean, we don't know what's behind the scenes, but we certainly have a pretty good idea. The way the research unfolded and what we were able to find in the government records they're scary, but at the same time, what we try to do is deliver information so people would know and could react to it in a logical and sequence. So we use a lot of metaphor. We take a complex idea and we keep breaking it down so that no matter who reads this text, you'll understand it. And that was the key, because it's not like an oil spill that you can go wrap your hands around and feel badly about. It's radio frequency energy.
Right. Doctor, you said there were other ionosphere heaters about the world. I'm a ham radio operator. For years we suffered with something that we call the woodpeckers, right? Which was ostensibly over the horizon radar attempted by the Russians.
Let's talk about that. And that's one of the additional applications that HAARP has. In fact, the site that it's sitting on is the old site for the backscatter over horizon radar that the military was putting together. And they abandoned it theoretically after the Cold War and then built this. And in fact, one of the patents is for that very specific application. The only difference is this our technology is even better because the backscatter, the way it works is once things got close in, you lost them on the screen. This from the ionosphere, from the area in which satellites are just about operating in, all the way down to ground level, including cruise missiles coming in, it can detect them without distortion from distance over the horizon, all the way in to right on the transmitter site if need be. The difference is, one of the other applications of this is it creates an energy field around each of those incoming objects that produces a real unique signature or identifying characteristic. And those characteristics they can then determine which objects might be carrying, for instance, nuclear payloads, or which objects are dummies. But again, they're doing it in a way where the energy is coming back and in fact impacting the entire population. So it's one of those applications that is within the document. One of the other applications within the patent is a power beaming technology, which goes right back to some of the ideas of Nikola Tesla in the early 1900s.
Here's this technology from Tesla.
It's from, it is. And here's how it's taken back. When I first researched this subject, it wasn't my area, but it kind of dropped in my lap, and sure, it was an important enough area for me to drop my work for a year and my other research and just follow this project. And what we found first was these original patents by Bernard Eastman, who was hired by ARCO, Atlantic Richfield Company, which is one of the biggest oil companies in the world. He was hired to find a way to burn natural gas on the North Slope. And then when he developed a series of patents for this focused ionospheric heater, and that's how he got the patent, was that very little bitty distinguishing characteristics that were so profound as being able to focus that energy. On that basis, he was granted the patent, and which was assigned immediately to ARCO.
And can you tell us how that occurs? In other words, normally from a dipole radiator, as you pointed out earlier, the radiation starts with a narrow beam, and as it goes out, further goes out, it spreads out. How do you technically reverse that process?
What they're doing is they're firing them in series, which is creating a cyclotron resonance. And so if you think about it, it's sort of corkscrewing it up as it's focusing it. But it's a firing sequence that's unique to this heater. And the way they sequenced it, they created this focus beam that required a larger array and the ability to fire in a certain sequence to create that effect. And we had some radio engineers take a look at all of these patents and tell us will this work, how will this work. And then we pulled the original patent file, which actually diagrams this effect that I'm describing. But in simple terms, it was the firing sequence with the antenna and the particular antenna configuration and design that created this effect. One of the other things that we found in those patents, this is what really triggered my interest from the very beginning, is there were these references to the New York Times articles, one from 1915 and one from 1940. And I thought, what the heck is a New York Times article referencing a patent that's from the 1980s, going back that far? And the first thing that comes to my mind is it's got to be Tesla. And when I pulled those New York Times articles, that's exactly what it was. And it was about his weapons system that people still talk about or remember, which was a system that would melt engines at distance and would create all of these really highly unusual effects. People equated it with particle beams and all different kinds of things. But that was the stimulus for Bernard Eastman's genius as he applied it to this particular technology.
But do you think what they called a beam weapon then was focused on?
I think probably so. It's just that, when you look back at Tesla patents and the terminology used, I mean, everything was evolving then. So the words that are confusing, I think maybe they're better than they are now because they sort of talk more about the effects. So I think that's probably what was going on then. But the fact is, it was the stimulus for Bernard Eastman to create this particular patent and then two others that went with it. And then coming out of that, there were other scientists surrounding this project, and they then took Bernard Eastman's ideas and using a much smaller antenna design, one more of the order of what Clark currently is, and they developed these over-the-horizon radar effects, power beaming technologies. In fact, the Earth systems that were being experimented by Raytheon Corporation in the 60s, The same scientist that was doing the work then is now sitting at the University of Fairbanks on a project called Faber.
When you talk about charging, I mean, you're talking about sending actual usable amounts of electrical energy into being.
That's right. And what they visualize here is there's three paths. One is for the beam system, one is for the reflector, and one is for a receiving antenna. And they look at it in a couple of different ways. One is suspending platforms in space where they can run these long-term missions by sending energy up. And the biggest handicap has always been being able to get enough energy up because of that problem with the further you go, the less energy gets delivered at a point.
At that point, we have gotten some of our energy and turned it over to the, so, Black, you've got about 7 minutes, we'll be back to you. My guest is Dr. Nick Begich, all the way from Alaska, a co-author of the book called Angels Don't Play This Hard. Everybody, I'm Mark Bell. My guest is Dr. Nick Begich. He co-authored the book called Angels Don't Play This Hard. It's about a project in Alaska that you need to screen a little bit and listen to, where you could people have talked about mind control. This may be the real thing. We'll take on what art is and what it might be doing in just a moment. All right. I think that this is a wise thing to do. I know a lot of you are joining us, San Francisco and others. So let's entrench. If you'd like to send me a fax with a question for Dr. Begich, lives in Alaska, which, by the way, is where the Heart Project is located. My fax number is area code 702-727-8499. 702-727-8499. And it makes sense to begin this way. Hi, Art. I missed the first half hour or so of your show. Could you please tell us again, please, Doctor, what ART stands for?
It stands for the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. And what it really amounts to is HAART. It's a very large radio frequency transmitter that sends an effective radiated power to the ionosphere at a proportion between 50 and 650 miles, say, above the Earth's surface. It sends up to 1 billion watts of effective radiated power. Wow, 1 gigawatt. 1 billion watts? That's correct. That's the effective radiated power. Now, the input power is less than that. but there's a factor of what they call antiquity. Sure. So what you get, according to the government records, is 1,000 times antiquity. So a megawatt is a gigawatt out. That's a phase one. That's where the first phase is headed. Right now it's running at about a third of that power, headed for a gigawatt within the next 12 months or so.
All right, question. We have all these reports of magnetic anomalies. Congress and Congress went on for the whole night. Could the HARP project cause such an anomaly?
You know, I've heard the same speculation, and it's possible. It would take some, at this combo level, it would take probably a number of unique circumstances. Things would already have to be at a threshold. So let's talk about that, because this is where the root of our concern really lies with HARP. And if you look back historically, when you're talking magnetic anomalies, there's been four, or actually three magnetic shifts in the past, say, 80,000 years. At one point, the magnetic north was somewhere in the Yukon about 80,000 years ago. It shifted out just off the coast of Norway, and then 50,000 years ago, it shifted to the Hudson Bay area. And 15,000 years ago, approximately, it shifted to its current location. So what else caused that? Some speculation.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, does that mean, Doctor, in your opinion, that magma is moving under the earth, or does it mean an iron core theory is somehow shifting? Or what do you think might be going on to shift magnetic? How can it happen?
It could be both of those factors, a combination of those factors, as well as there's some speculation that aligning up with planetary bodies creates the resonance effect from the gravity waves. There's lots of different speculation, but it doesn't happen. The planet today, everyone knows the planet is releasing a lot of energy right now in the form of earthquakes, weather patterns, disruptions, not just the United States, all over the planet. Yes, correct. And it's increasing. I mean, if you look historically back the last 20, 30 years, you can see a real clear curve on that graph, no matter what the chart is. You're right, worse and worse. Now, the question is, here we are in Alaska with up to 1 gigawatt on phase one. A billion watts, 4.7 billion watts on phase two, and a desired level, according to the government documents that we have changed to put this book together, they want to get up to 100 billion watts. The question is, where's the straw on that camel's back?
I love that the average person out there, Doctor, needs to understand how much power that is now. The strongest AM radio station that I transmit on, legally in the U.S., is the big ones, like KOMO, and there's a whole list of them, are 50,000 watts. And you just said at the top of the project, they're going to be talking about 100 billion watts?
That's a desired level according to the government records that we found. And that was in a document that the government, in the way they described it, even denied that documents exist. Yeah, we got the copy of they consider it an unpublished document. It's 613 pages long. And the midst of that is this little section that sort of lays out where it was from the working group questions of the early scientific researchers that were putting hard together apart having them back. It was for internal use only, and we were able to get a copy of it. I don't want to release it now, but it wasn't classified. It was just, they denied that it was published, and there was a technical memorandum. And so we cited them both, can we make it available to media when they ask for it? But what you're talking about is those power levels are huge. I mean, you're talking about even at the levels of, say, 4.7 gigawatts up to, say, 10 gigawatts. We had Princeton, New Jersey physicist, Dr. Richard Williams, comment in our book. And wait, here's how he characterized it. This makes it pretty simple, I think. They refer to at one point the need to go at least 100 CVW. One way to visualize this power level is that a 10 billion watt generator running continuously for 1 hour would deliver a quantity of energy equal to that of a Hiroshima-sized atomic bomb.
Oh, natural.
Okay? Now let's talk about that, because one of the applications of this transmitter also is to create an electromagnetic pulse, or an ESP. Before the way those were created was upper atmospheric detonation of thermonuclear weapons. So they create this energy pulse that knocks out electronic circuits over a very large area. That's right. The problem is, it's a little messy, okay, from a technological standpoint. But think about the rush now, everyone's saying, okay, let's get rid of thermonuclear. And you got to wonder whether they got to replace it. Well, this technology, according to patents, is exceptional for that application. Because
You're saying they can create an EMP pulse without a nuclear detonation.
right, so you have an EMP without radiation, and you can directionally direct it using an atmospheric mirror.
How narrow do you think compete with at the point back on Earth would be? Do you have any guesses?
Well, they're saying like I think it's like my memory serves me is about 30 degrees.
30 degrees. All right, well, listen, everybody, again, we're talking about radiation in frequencies between 1 and 30 hertz, which has a distinct biological effect on human beings. It confuses them. We really don't quite altogether know what it does, but it affects the biological human being. Biologically,
I think we do know what it is. I mean, it would definitely disrupt mental function. There's no question. Literature is clear. And we lay that literature out in a very pragmatic way as we approach it. And we only cite military documents and mainstream science, mainstream media, because that's all you need.
All right, what have you got? You got confusion. What actually happens to a person subjected at what power levels at these frequencies? What happens to that?
At 1/50th of power level that would naturally occur in the Earth, which is, that's the power level necessary to create a mood swing, to create a state where you just can't see clearly, things are confused. And what you're talking about is it has to be the right waveform, pulse at the right frequency, and that frequency range is at 1 to 30 hertz. Now, if you think about, so we just kind of go through where that's at. In the lower range, say 1 hertz to around 4 hertz is the state that you're in when you're in very, very deep sleep. The next level, which is called theta, which is running from about 4 to say 7 hertz, is a state that you're in sort of in a semi-sleep state. You might even hit some of that when you're awake. Also, the next state up is a good state for creative work, creative thinking. And then above that, above say 13 hertz, you get into theta, which is sort of an awake, alert state. But the higher you go, the more agitated you get. As you hit 30 hertz as the predominant brainwave frequency, that's what you're doing when you're screaming at somebody at a very loud decibel.
Or either that or grabbing them by the throat and choking.
Right. And so you've got these broad swings, but and what happens is your brain waves with the right pulse energy coming in will lock onto that. And then you become, it's what's called brain entrainment. So the frequency locks on, it causes a response. And that response works very quickly. And was demonstrated at Yale University by Jose Delgado for 2 decades. First with electrode implanting and then wireless radio frequency as a carrier and pulsing it. And his work continues today in Madrid at the University of Madrid in Spain. And it's well known that this effect occurs. There's a lot of literature that lays that sort of out. But the biological effects, in fact, if you visualize the human body, right, it starts, the way Western science approaches it, we start from the outside, we look at body parts, so we look at body components, we look at chemicals and cells, and then we look at nothing else, basically. But when you look at what we really are, you start at an energy level, then you go to an atomic level, a molecular level, a chemical level, a body part level, cellular, and so on the way up. So if you affect the energy level in a way that resonates with the same frequency or resonance with chemicals within the body, create amps up, if you will, chemical reactions that then manifest as disorders, first in the cells, and then later in body components, and then in the body itself. When you think about energy interactions with human beings, they're not detached. I mean, we are attached. And if you direct those in a certain way, you can create profound effects. And the literature is clear. Now, there's a lot of debate because people trained in traditional American medicine approach it from one angle. People trained in physics look at the human body and they don't see any difference between physical applications fit human beings any more than apply to anything else.
All right, and again, the military, backtrack again, is telling us the HART project, and I've seen photos of the antenna arrays up there. Where is it located, by the way?
It's about 250 miles north, east of Anchorage, and about the same distance southwest of Fairbanks.
Okay. The stated goals of HART, they say it's certainly harmless to human beings, and they're suggesting it's to look for underground caverns, bunkers, whatever, map the underground, and or to keep the ionosphere toward what end, Doctor?
They're saying for communication purposes.
Okay.
But when you look at HART, think of this transmitter as a hammer, and you can build a whole lot of different things with that hammer, depending on the knowledge and intent of the operator. You can build that Earth penetrating tomography application, look at the Earth. You can build the over-the-horizon radar application, which they talk about. You can build the communication application. Interesting thing about the communications application is that the high power level, you can essentially, according to the patent, knock out communications, land, speed, and air while using the system to carry their own communication. In other words, they can wipe out the radio stations that we're talking about tonight, television, every bit of communication.
Wow.
And yet carry their own.
And yet communicate with, say, submarines at sea. So they're creating a modulated EMP pulse, right, that is destroying other communications while allowing their communication.
Right. And we found the document. This one was a profound document, and it's one that came very late in our research, but we did get it in the book, and it was by the International Red Cross in Geneva. And the text is I'm pulling it as I'm talking to you, was called Expert Meeting on Certain Weapon Systems and on the Implementation Mechanisms of International Law. And it's from June of 1994. And this specific document was very important because what it laid out is the various frequency ranges that you need for a number of effects using radio frequency or microwave weapon systems. And what we had our experts, if you will, in the radio frequency issues, look at that document and compare it to the HART contract document. HART will produce all the effects I'm about to describe, which include biological effects as far as deleterious or negative biological effects, causing debilitation, loss of mental function, to errors in computers. That's where the things aren't flowing right through the computers in such a way as just all garbles coming out, to melting circuits. I mean, this whole range of things based on how much energy and at what frequency range is transmitted. So here's an international document that lays out that. And it's the only document we ever found where it's just matched. I mean, perfectly matched with the HART specification. So now the question becomes, and this is the question everybody asks, well, would our government do that? Well, let me tell you, oh, hell yes. They certainly would. And when you look back on the history, and to close a little bit, I'm going to pull it. Let me pull it up because
the applications, possible applications for a weapon system are so obvious that the question is almost not worth asking. Of course they would do it. Of course they would research it. And I'm sure others are as well. But the big question is, do they know what the hell they're doing? And do they know what the effects will be? When they first detonated an atomic weapon, there were people who thought, unfortunately, it didn't happen, that air molecules might actually ignite or chain react. Then we can blow up our own atmosphere. Now, I'm not saying something like this will happen in HART, but do they really know when they start pumping out a billion, what is it, 100 million watts?
That's what they desire. What they have right now is designed for 1 billion watts. Headed on phase 2 with the contract is Lebanon. They're not funded yet, 4.7 billion watts. And then the modular is designed to be added to continuous rate. The question is, what will it do? Do they really know? I think all of the scientists involved on the front end of the project, probably don't see the big picture because the way the military works, just like in the Manhattan Project that you were referring to earlier, probably compartmentalized. Do they know for sure what will happen? No. But the people running this program, are people that are in the business of making the best fueling system. So they're going to develop the best system they can. And when you look back on atomic research, they knew the effects of those blasts in Nevada. They knew what was going to happen all the way back 60 years ago. They just didn't bother to tell the American people about it.
All right, on that note, let's hold it right there. Dr. Nick Begich is my guest. He co-authored Angel No Place is Hard. I would have to second that for you.
Pointing to activities of the CIA with a number of experiments that they were involved with. One in particular that's gotten quite a bit of notoriety was the LSD experiments on 8,000 military personnel without the permission or consent. Military experimentation up here involved Alaska during the Cold War, injecting Native Alaskans with radioactive iodine without their permission or consent. When you look at the atomic program in Nevada, they did the atmospheric clouds to assure everyone everything was safe. And right now, 50 years later, we found out that they know what they knew then. We know now. It took us 50 years to catch up. What our book does, it doesn't wait for 50 years. We found out what they're up to. We document it in a way that no one can deny. And yet it's today, and it is today in the sense that we can still do something about this project before it moves forward very much further. And I think the thing that we're talking about, that we talked about tonight, the idea of mental disruption, I mean, this hits the root of who we are as Americans, who we are as free people. When you can interfere with the way people think, you can forget about what we say, you can forget about the projection of what we might write. Because if you can't think clearly, none of those things matter. So this is really striking, and this is my political background. This is what the most profound thing is. Here's a technology that is capable of disrupting the way we think. And going back to Zbigniew Brzezinski, who wrote in the early 70s about this technology, projecting that someday it would come about, he said, a more controlled and directed society will gradually appear linked to technology. And then the quote that quote from this book was, unhindered constraints of traditional values, this elite would not hesitate to achieve its political ends by using the latest modern techniques for influencing public behavior and keeping society under close surveillance and control. Technological and scientific momentum would then be freed on the situation to exploit, unquote. This was the National Security Advisor to Jimmy Carter, and he was predicting this technology within the book that I mentioned earlier called Between Two Ages.
It's a funny thing, Doctor. I recall some early comedies. I can't recall the name of the show, doesn't matter. I think it was Ron Moore or something. Where people would come running in and claim that the telephone company microwave was causing their brain to go scattered and it was affecting them. And, they were total nutcases. And it's from comedy and science fiction to today's science reality. And this is really actually what art truly may be.
That's correct.
Now, the questions I've got coming in by fax are as follows. For example, these are really good questions. What you ask your guests are, if there's any way to put together a building or, and this is going to sound crazy, let it be so, some sort of helmet or some sort of thing that would protect people from this radiation.
Yes, actually there it is. And I spoke with Dr. Patrick Flanagan, who many of your listeners may be familiar with, and he was one of our technical advisors on the project. I met with him a couple of weeks ago, and this question keeps coming up. And what he has suggested, and I haven't got a part of this, so I'll give you the descriptor as he gave it to me, is if you take a white noise generator, disconnect the wires that go to the sound output of a white noise generator, hook those leads into a power amplifier on the input side of a power amplifier, and then on the output side of that power amplifier, if you connect insulated wire, a stranded wire, 18 gauge, 16 gauge.
Let me stop you for a second. White noise, here, to give you an example, if I can get it going here. That's white noise. That's simply a combination of all noises coming out of a radio, right? It's not tuned to anything specific.
Basically, yes, but they bring it to the power amplifier, and then you take the output side of that power amplifier, connect an insulated wire lead, and run that wire lead around the area that you're looking to insulate, run the effect. And here's what's going to happen, is an ELF or an extremely low frequency, and this is helpful also for any ELF in the area, whether it's hard generated or generated by normal circuits within your house. What it'll do is it keeps the ELF from locking on to biological systems, because ELF in the range from 1 hertz up to about 100 hertz can lock on to a biological system and create a number of effects. What this does is keep it from locking on. The white noise impacts that the power amplifier sets up a field that just disrupts the ELF and it keeps it from locking on. So it's a way to insulate, at least within a confined area, against ELF. Now, Patrick is working on some things that might be a little more portable because you can walk around with power amplifiers and all of that. But that's down the road. At some point, we've got a newsletter coming out in January that's mentioned in the very last pages of the book, and we'll actually have a circuit design and a component, so you can go to a local Radio Shack or electronics store, get those components and put something together on your own. And that's kind of something we want to make sure everyone is aware of as we get a regular part list that makes it simple for people to deal with.
Now, what do we know about the constant activation level of the heart? In other words, has the heart begun to play yet?
Yes, it has, and they've run intermittently a series of tests. They started December 15th last year, which has been mentioned to us correlated with an 8-day power outage on the second day.
Oh, do I remember that power outage?
Okay, well, that was the same day they activated heart for the first test day.
I've got news for you. It was more than 8 states. They reported it in the press, I think, as 8 states. But I did an all-night show on it. It's the damnedest show I ever did. It was like the show on magnetism the other night. We got these really weird reports. Suddenly power went out here. And simultaneously it went out across, I would say, almost the western third of the entire U.S. and Alaska. And I think it's exactly what you're talking about.
Well, it could have very well have been heart. I mean, it certainly is